Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us once again. Claudia Clark is the author of the upcoming book just released yesterday, Dear Barack, The Extraordinary Partnership of Barack Obama and Angela Merkel. Disruption Books, October 19, 2021 is the one publishing it. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree in History and Public Policy from Michigan State University. She was the president of the College Democrats at Michigan State and was active in Amnesty International Now and pro-choice groups. Clark holds a Master's of Arts in Labor and in Industrial Relations from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a Master's in U.S. History with an emphasis on women's history from San Jose State University, and a Master's of Social Work, MSW, from the University of Michigan with an emphasis in community organizing. She and her husband resides in Berlin, Germany, where she previously served as National Get Out the Vote, GoTV coordinator for the Democrats Abroad, the Germany chapter. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Claudia. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely so. I mean, actually, when all this was happening in Germany, the new elections, etc., I kind of followed it with the expectation that we would start to see a curve away from what we have been seeing, not only here in the United States, but throughout the world on sort of a rightward move. What can you first tell me about the administration of Angela Merkel?
Angela Merkel, for the last, 16 years, has been the head of Germany's Christian Democratic Union, or center-right party. And initially, when she started, she was very, she was conservative. But as the years progressed, the longer she was in office as chancellor, the more she moved her center-right party to the center. And so she made a lot of policy decisions in the later years of her chancellorship. For example, opening the German borders to Syrian refugees, to attempting to phase Germany away from using coal, that kind of thing. And that started, in the late 2015 kind of time period. So, and as she has done that, it has created a dichotomy in Germany, because on the one hand, her party members were upset with her for moving the party too far to the right. Her party members were concerned because too far to the left or center. And on the other hand, the people from the liberal side still thought she was too conservative. So she was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it was interesting because she saw the writing on the wall in 2017 when she was elected for her fourth term. While it is true she won re-election, her party did the worst that it had done since I think it was World War II. And a lot of people were concerned because it was some of her policies. And then the following year in 2018, the other various German states, Germany is made up of 16 Bundesstaates, right? And they had state elections, and her party was taking a beating in that regard as well. Meanwhile, the far right party, the AfD, and the Greens were building momentum, and so she made the decision to step down after her term ended this past September. And what's interesting is that we still don't know who's going to be chancellor. They're still kind of working out the details. But the candidate that was replaced her in the Christian Democratic Union, he took a really bad beating. He had done worse. The Christian Democratic Union had done worse than they'd ever done. And some people think it was because of the quality of the candidate. I try to stay kind of neutral on what happened and having an opinion. But I really think it's more than that. I think this is very typical. We see this in the United States too. 16 years of having one party control a government, it's a long time. And people want to change. And that was very evident as early as 2017 that people want to change. And so I'm not surprised that her party didn't do as well as expected. What I am surprised is how incredibly close it was, because I kind of expected it to be a landslide, because things were indicating that people wanted change, they wanted it in a drastic way.
But would you have expected a landslide on the left side or the right side?
I was expecting, I was expecting it. We were hearing it pretty much on the left okay. side, and it looks like the new chancellor will be from the center left party,
right, the social democrat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we don't know for sure. But not only that, but the way the German government works is that they form a coalition. The parties that
I
receive the most votes.
I think they have enough votes if the Social Democrats and the Green Party unite, right?
Right. Yes. And the holdout right now is the Free Democratic Party, and that's kind of they're the free market.
Right.
Market party. They don't believe in government regulation. It's kind of let the markets.
They're the neoliberals.
Yeah. And so it's looking like I'm in the States now, but I'm still trying to follow what's going on in Germany. But it looks like they're really close to forming a coalition between the three. And then when the way they form coalitions in Germany is that once they decide that they want to form a government together, then they choose their chancellor. Then what they do is they put a platform together, and then they decide who is going to be cabinet positions from which party.
From which parties,
and so that all kind of comes together. Mm-hmm.
I think that is a healthier system anyway, because it gives a lot of opinions. It doesn't, you don't have to be one or the other, because at the end you can actually get a coalition put together that represents more than one brand.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the United States, it's kind of a winner take all thing.
Exactly.
And that I don't think is particularly fair. But the one thing that I think is really interesting about this is right after in the days right after the election, there were talks, because the way the vote looked, the center left party, or the CPU, received the most votes, and then the CDU, and then the Green Party candidate, and then the FDP. So that was kind of the
right.
ranking. And it looked like the Green Party and the FDP, the Free Democratic Party, so the people that came in third and fourth, they were going to decide with whom they wanted to form a coalition.
Right.
Were they going, and they were going to decide, okay, who's going to be the new chancellor? Is it going to be Scholz from the left, or is it going to be Laschet from the right? And that was a little interesting, because it seemed like it should be the other way around. It should be, okay, it seemed like it should have been one of Scholz or Laschet deciding with whom they wanted to work, but it was the other, it's opposite. And I think it's really interesting. And
in other words, the minor parties were the one picking who the winners are going to be, as opposed to these guys saying, we are going to choose you and you to come on the coalition.
And it's kind of counterintuitive, because the voters had spoken, and based upon the voting, the voters wanted Scholz to be the chancellor. But it looked like there was a possibility, because Laschet initially, I still don't think he has officially resigned yet.
Right.
But it looked like, despite what the voters wanted, these other people could still come in and decide that they wanted Laschet instead as chancellor. So it was kind of interesting, and it's counterintuitive to what we have in the States. But I do think it is definitely a lot healthier, because this whole winner take all thing that the United States has, you win all you need is 260 electoral votes, and
but it's actually worse in the United States in that we don't really have a democracy. 2 senators per state, when a state has half a million people and the other one has 40 something million. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about your book. What got you into writing that book, Barack, the love affair between Barack and Angela Merkel?
That's a complicated question. I happened to, we were still living in the States at the time. And I happened to turn on the final press conference between Obama and Merkel in 2016, post-election. It was Obama's final trip to Berlin as president. And I had been following Merkel's career because we knew, my husband and I knew at some point we were going to move to Germany. And I just remember Merkel being so visibly upset when a reporter asked her, what are you going to do? You know, this is your last working relationship with one another in a formal capacity. What are you going to do? And Merkel just looked like she was about to cry, which is so atypical of her.
Right.
And so I started thinking, okay, this is interesting. We'll see what happens. And then I happened to watch the first encounter between Merkel and Trump in March of 2017. And when Merkel visited Washington and Trump would not even shake Merkel's hand. And It was, total 180. And I learned that Obama was visiting Germany later that year in May it was the 500th anniversary of Reformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that Obama's very, very first trip overseas post-presidency was to Berlin to visit Merkel.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, there's something here. There's something really interesting about their friendship. And at this point, my husband and I knew we were moving to Germany. I don't speak German, despite my best efforts. I have trouble with the language. So I knew I needed to do something that constructive with my time. And I figured, I'm concerned with what's going on in the world with Brexit and with the outright taking control in Poland. And the telling thing about Obama and Merkel's relationship is they're for all intents and purposes, they're from different political parties.
Right.
But they put their differences aside and worked together because they knew it was in the best interest. And so I thought, this is a policy lesson. Other world leaders can learn from this, that in today's globalized world, it's more imperative now than it was since World War II, since the Cold War, that allied world leaders learn to work together. Mm-hmm. And while that's the case, you see on the other extreme, you've got more, Trump and Brexit, you've got countries trying so hard to separate themselves because they think they're trying to keep their borders safe. And I actually think that's the worst approach because, with wars no longer entail just invading another country militarily, but somebody can do plot a terrorist attack from their apartment in Belgium for bombing in Paris. And it's imperative that world leaders be able to share intelligence and talk and communicate with one another. And I'm just concerned with what the toll and that things are taking the other direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, when you saw the relationship between Barack and you said that he flew, the first flight was to Germany. How was his reception? And did they really play that up pretty big out there, or?
They made a big deal about it. I think there were approximately 7,000 participants that visited, because what it was an open forum where Obama and Merkel spoke with a couple of clergy members, mm-hmm. and some other activists. Mm-hmm. And so, they had the forum, and then you looked around the crowd, and there were people who had signs saying, "Welcome back, Mr. President," and "Can we keep you, Mr. President?" and "Du bist ein Berliner." So you could feel the momentum. And I moved to Germany in September of 2017, and the Germans, I saw a lot of how the Germans liked Obama when I was doing my research, but since I've been here, it is legitimate. People would, when they found out I was an American, they would just ask me, why isn't Obama president anymore? Can he become president again? And then, my broken German, I'm like, nein, no. And then it's, well, why not? And so, in my broken German, I have to try and tell them because our constitution won't allow it. Well, why is that? That's dumb. So it was, the Germans absolutely loved him. And even now, and so, and I think that played a large part in the relationship between Merkel and Obama, is because she knew how popular he was.
I still remember that huge thing that he had in Berlin. I think it was Berlin when he had that big thing in the park, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people showed up to that. It was amazing.
Yeah, 200,000 people.
Imagine that, and he wasn't even running for a place in Germany. But you know, it's interesting that you said Merkel and Obama they were from two different parties, which is true based on the names of the parties. But ironically,
right.
Places like England and places like Canada, Germany, their center right look nothing like what we like to call center right. They believe in all these social programs that we need here in the United States, but we are called socialists for wanting them. Your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, yeah, and when I talk to people, I'm very careful to say, technically speaking, they are from different political parties, but you're not comparing apples to apples, because the Republican Party now in the United States, it's not the fiscal conservative party of, say, Reagan. It has been taken over by extremists and religious right wing, and it is definitely not, the fiscal conservative and the free market. That is definitely not the case. So I think that the Republican Party of today in the United States is almost equivalent to what is taking form in the rest of Europe right now. In Germany, the AfD, which stands for Alternative for Deutschland, and that's the anti-immigrant, that's the anti-Semitism. It's building momentum in Germany, but it's still a minority. And the center right is a lot more. The center right in Europe, not just Germany, but in Europe, is a lot more. It really truly is center, and it is really difficult to try and compare political parties.
It is amazing. That is what I've noticed in because you go to you ask the conservative government in England or Merkel, would you like to go ahead and change your healthcare system to a more free market-based healthcare system? They'll say, "Are you crazy? The people won't allow that." Which is an interesting thing. Now, as far as your book is concerned, I know it was released yesterday. What's the reception? Are you really getting it out there, or?
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised at the reviews that I'm getting. I shouldn't say surprised. I'm excited about it, because
excited. That's the right word.
One of the things what I really wanted to focus on was the positive side. I'm disturbed at what's happening in terms of how negative and nasty things have gotten. And in one of the reviews I've gotten, it was called a delightful, because it was, in a world where politics is often so scathing and so nasty. I talk about how well they got along, and yes, they had their differences, but despite their differences, they worked together, and they learned from each other, and they helped one another, and how it's a nice change of pace, and I think that's what people will need to see. Now, if you want, I make no bones about my disdain for Trump, but Trump wasn't the focus of the book. I talk about Trump at the very, very end, when I talk about how he managed to undermine everything Merkel and Obama had done together.
Right.
But the purpose of the book was not to bash Trump. It wasn't to bash Brexit. It was more of this is how world leaders what they can accomplish when they put their mind to it, when they put democracy and the well-being of society above their own personal beliefs or tastes.
Now, living in Germany and coming for some time now, I guess you lived in Germany for about 3 years or so. From 17 to now, right? Coming back to
we're still living.
How do you? By the way, is your husband German, or you just?
No, we're both American. We're both Americans, and there are a lot of reasons why we decided to move to Germany. I've got family there, but a lot of it was my husband was, he's an engineer and he worked in Silicon Valley, and he was tired of the 8-hour work weeks. I got death threats from people because I supported the Affordable Care Act.
Gotcha.
And I felt like I was a stranger in my own country. I felt my beliefs better aligned with what those of the European Union.
So let me ask you this. That is amazing that you're saying that. And I'm interested because I've interviewed people that have permanently relocated to Canada, permanently relocated to England, UK, and now your relocation to Germany. Are you becoming a German citizen as well, or a German resident? How does that work?
My husband has permanent residence. Because I came with him, because he's had the work permit, I was able to come in with him, but he could get residency sooner than I could. And the minute he could actually qualify, we'd been here long enough and he had made enough money, he applied for residency. And we're talking about, we have a couple more years before we can actually qualify for German citizenship.
Right.
And we would have to, Germany doesn't allow dual citizenship, so we would have to give up.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. See, Panama, where I'm from, we can be dual citizens. I didn't know that didn't occur in Germany.
Now, the interesting thing is with this recent election, one of the things the SPD does want to look at is granting dual citizenship.
Right.
So by the time we're eligible, and I think it's 2 or 3 more years, it might be a moot point and we might be able to do both. I'm on the fence on whether I want to give up my U.S. citizenship. We have to file U.S. taxes. So
right.
We have to file U.S. taxes and German taxes, so it's a pain.
Right.
We don't really don't foresee going back to the United States. So right. My position is I don't really care. Right. I just want to be able to vote. Mm-hmm. And I can still, I can't vote in Germany, but I still can vote in the United States. So. Right.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is you have time to think about it. And if right. one doesn't have to give up a U.S. citizenship, you really don't. So if they change it, that's great. I intend to keep both of my citizenships. I think there's value in that. But that is great. Now, we're coming close to the end. Is there anything that you want to tell me that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think the one thing that I would like to emphasize about about the book is that it is something that it provided an opportunity for 2 people who skeptical of one another, and how they went from being skeptical of one another to, Merkel cried when she said goodbye to Obama for the final time. And you tell that to Germans and they're like, she did what? Because it is so
uncultural for them. Yeah, out of character.
Right. And so I think it's important for people in today's globalized world, as polarized as we are. I'm a political activist myself. I spent my entire life being a political activist. And I understand more than anyone, the fine line between selling out and compromise. Mm-hmm. It's very gray. And I think we've gotten to the point where nobody wants to work with someone from the other side, right. because they don't want to be seen. And look at what it has gotten us. And we're having culture wars on a public health issue that should be resolved, but people have turned it into culture wars and political. And that is just silly and it's dangerous. And I think the lesson you can learn from Obama and Merkel is they didn't agree on a lot of things. They compromised. And as a result, the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, mm-hmm. the Iran nuclear. And we need to get away from this. I'm not gonna, this person voted for a Republican, this person went to an anti-gay church 20 years ago, so I'm not gonna vote for them, or I'm not gonna work with, that's dangerous, and that's getting us nowhere. And so I think we need to shift the conversation back to saying it's okay to work with somebody from it's okay to have differences of opinion. You work together and you compromise, and that just isn't happening anymore.
You know what, Claudia, I think that is a great place to end. And I think that sentiment is very important for all of us who are activists, journalists, activist writers, activists on the floor, to actually take that into account. It's not a sellout to want to work with somebody that may be diametrically opposed to your beliefs. Thank you so kindly, Claudia Clark, author of the upcoming book, Dear Barack, The Extraordinary Partnership of Barack Obama and Angela Merkel. Go read the book. It has great, prescient information for you. Thank you so kindly, Claudia, for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you so much for having me.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.